Sophia's heart raced as she approached the sleek, towering building that housed Liam Davis' office. She had seen this kind of place on TV, luxurious, pristine, and impossibly intimidating. The glass doors parted as she stepped inside, and her footsteps echoed across the polished marble floor. The assistant who had escorted her to the building gave her a reassuring smile, but she could feel the nervous energy in her chest tightening with every step she took. "You're in the right place, Miss Harris," the assistant said, her tone light but businesslike. "Mr. Davis is expecting you." Sophia nodded, though her stomach twisted in knots. Mr. Davis, the billionaire who had hired her to be the surrogate for his child. She had only met him a few times through brief phone calls and email exchanges, and each time he had come off as cold, detached, and utterly professional. Nothing like the kind of man she expected to be dealing with. She had thought this whole arrangement would be business only, no emotions, no attachments. Just a job that would pay her well enough to take care of her mother's medical bills and allow her to finish school. But as she walked down the long corridor toward his office, she had to admit that the weight of the moment hit her hard. This was more than just business now. There was a child growing inside her, a child she would one day have to hand over to the man standing on the other side of that door. When the assistant finally stopped in front of a large, imposing door, Sophia's heart skipped a beat. The assistant knocked twice before pushing the door open. "Mr. Davis, Miss Harris is here." The first thing Sophia noticed was the view. The expansive city skyline stretched out through the large floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a soft light over the room. It was stunning, and yet, in the stillness of the office, the space felt strangely empty. Then she saw him, Liam Davis, the man who had hired her. He sat behind a glass desk, his back straight, his expression sharp and unwavering. He was younger than she had expected, probably not much older than her, but there was something about him that exuded power, something that made her feel small despite the luxury surrounding her. He barely looked up as she entered, his focus entirely on the laptop in front of him. Sophia felt the need to introduce herself, but couldn't quite bring herself to speak. Instead, she stood there, awkwardly holding the folder of papers he had sent her. The assistant stepped aside, leaving the two of them alone. Liam finally glanced up, his eyes quickly assessing her. There was no warmth, no welcoming smile, just a curt nod. "You must be Miss Harris. I trust you understand the terms of the agreement." Sophia blinked, feeling the weight of his gaze. Her voice was shaky as she clutched the folder in her hands. "Yes, I do, but I just wanted to make sure this is all legitimate. It's just a lot to take in." Liam leaned back in his chair, exuding an air of confidence that seemed to fill the room. His gaze remained steady, calculating, but there was something unsettling about the way he looked at her, as though he were sizing her up. "I assure you, everything is in order," he said, his voice smooth and composed. "I simply need someone to carry my child, and you're the right person for the job. No emotions, no complications, just business." Sophia's mouth went dry. She had expected him to be professional, but hearing him say it so bluntly made her stomach churn. The baby they were talking about wasn't just any baby, it was going to be his child. Her child. A child she would carry for the next 9 months and then hand over to him without looking back. But could she really do that? "I understand," she said, trying to mask the sudden wave of doubt that had risen in her chest. "But this isn't just business to me, it's life-changing. I want to make sure this is right." Liam finally looked at her in earnest. His gaze softened slightly, though his expression was still guarded. He seemed to study her, his sharp eyes taking in the quiet strength in her voice, the vulnerability in her eyes. For the first time, something in his demeanor shifted. "I don't mix business with personal emotions," he said, his tone still firm but a little more uncertain. "Do we have an understanding?" Sophia paused, the weight of his words sinking in. She was here to do a job, yes, but that didn't mean she had to completely shut off everything inside her. This wasn't just business, it was her life, too. She took a deep breath and nodded, her resolve settling in her chest. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "I'll sign the papers, but I just want to make sure. We're doing this for the right reasons." Liam studied her for a long moment, as if measuring her sincerity. Then he nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. Good, let's get this done then. And just like that, the deal was struck. But Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between them in that moment. She hadn't expected him to be so detached, so emotionless. But at the same time, there was an intensity in his eyes, a coldness that she had no idea how to interpret. Was it just business for him? Or was there something more underneath that calculated exterior? The tension between them lingered as she left his office. And as the elevator doors closed behind her, she realized that what had started as a simple arrangement was now anything but. Hello, family, and welcome to Fiction Stories TV. If you love deeply emotional stories about love, loss, and unexpected reunions, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with someone you care about. Don't forget to turn on your notifications so you never miss a new story from us. Your support truly means everything. Now, sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Several weeks passed, and Sophia found herself meeting with Liam more frequently. What was once a straightforward arrangement had become something far more complicated. The appointments, the checkups, each one felt like another step toward something neither of them had planned for. The distance between them grew shorter each time they saw each other. Sophia couldn't deny that Liam's presence, his insistence on being there for every appointment, was beginning to make her feel cared for. It was confusing. She had expected him to be a faceless businessman, someone who saw her only as a means to an end. But there was something about the way he showed up, the way he looked after her, that she couldn't ignore. One afternoon, after another routine checkup, they were sitting in a small waiting room, the tension between them palpable. She shifted uncomfortably in the chair as Liam sat across from her, scanning through some paperwork. She could feel his eyes on her, as if he were studying her every move. You don't have to come to every appointment, you know, she said, trying to keep her voice casual. It's not like we're in a relationship. Liam's gaze softened slightly, and he set the paperwork aside. I know, but I need to make sure everything goes smoothly. This is important. Sophia paused, her heartbeat quickening. She had never expected him to sound so gentle. It caught her off guard, and for a moment she felt something stir inside her, but she quickly shook it off. Well, I'm fine, really, she said, her tone more defensive than she intended. This is just a job, Liam, for both of us. Liam met her eyes, his expression unreadable. I know, but I still want to make sure you're okay. I don't want anything happening to you or the baby. The sincerity in his voice made her heart race. She felt something real stir deep inside her, but she couldn't let herself go there. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. But as she looked at Liam, sitting there with his guarded expression, and yet a touch of softness she hadn't noticed before, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she had underestimated him. Sophia walked out of the office that day with her head spinning. The way Liam had looked at her, the tenderness in his voice, it left her unsettled, unsure of what to make of it. This whole arrangement was supposed to be clean, transactional. She had a job to do, and so did he. There was no room for anything else. But the way he treated her, the way he seemed to genuinely care, kept pulling her in, despite her best efforts to keep her guard up. She hadn't signed up for this. She hadn't signed up for him. The next few weeks passed in a blur. There were appointments, medical checkups, and the usual cycle of adjusting to her changing body. Liam attended every appointment without fail. At first, she thought it was just part of his deal, something he had to do as the father-to-be. But as time went on, it became clear that it was more than that. One afternoon, as they sat in the waiting room after another checkup, Liam's usual calm demeanor was gone. He had been looking at her for longer than usual, his gaze intense, studying her every movement. The silence between them was thick, but Sophia couldn't help herself. She had to say something. You really don't have to be here all the time, she said, her voice softer than usual. I can manage on my own. Liam raised an eyebrow, but there was something in his eyes that softened. I'm not worried about you, Sophia. I'm worried about the baby. I want to make sure everything goes the way it's supposed to. She tilted her head, trying to read him. She had never seen him like this before, so open, so vulnerable. It made her uncomfortable, but it also made her wonder. "I know," she said, trying to sound casual, "but we're not in a relationship. This is just business, that's all." Liam's expression flickered for a moment before he caught himself. His lips pressed together in a tight line. "I never said it wasn't," he said, his voice firm, though it lacked the usual sharpness. "But I don't want anything to happen to you or the baby. It's important." Sophia was quiet for a moment. It felt like there was something more in his words, something he wasn't saying. But she wasn't going to press him. She couldn't. Not when everything about this situation was already complicated enough. She nodded, her gaze dropping to her hands. "Yeah, I get it." After that, the rest of the appointment passed in relative silence, but the air between them had shifted again. She could feel it. By the time she returned home that evening, Sophia was exhausted. The weight of everything was starting to press down on her, her body, the growing baby, and the complex emotions that were starting to swirl inside her. She hadn't expected to feel this way. She hadn't expected Liam to matter to her. But the truth was that he did, and it scared her. She had always been the type to take care of herself. She had never needed anyone, not her family, not a boyfriend, and certainly not a billionaire who could offer her nothing more than a financial arrangement. And yet, here she was, lying on the couch in her small apartment, wondering what it all meant. What did it mean that Liam had become so involved? What did it mean that he seemed to care, even though he had made it clear from the start that he didn't mix business with personal emotions? The doorbell rang, pulling her from her thoughts. She groaned, not in the mood for anyone. But when she saw the familiar figure standing on the other side of the door, she felt a strange sense of relief mixed with confusion. "Liam, what are you doing here?" she asked, surprised. She hadn't expected him to visit her at home, not after all that had happened, not after everything had been laid out in terms of the deal. "I wanted to check on you," he said, his voice casual, but his eyes revealed something different. "You've been working too hard. I figured you could use some company." Sophia blinked, taken aback by his sudden concern. "I'm fine," she said, but the words felt hollow. Liam stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his gaze scanning the apartment. It wasn't much, just a modest space, a small couch, a worn-out coffee table. But it was hers. And there was something about Liam's presence in her home, in this small, unremarkable space that made everything feel different. "Why don't you sit down?" she offered, gesturing to the couch, trying to hide the nerves that were suddenly bubbling up inside her. He sat down, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. The silence was thick, but it wasn't uncomfortable. In fact, it felt oddly intimate, like they were two people who had crossed a line they hadn't fully understood until now. "I didn't expect you to visit," Sophia said finally, breaking the silence. She sat down across from him, keeping her distance, though she couldn't help but feel an undeniable pull toward him. "I know you didn't," he said, his voice quieter now. I don't want you to feel like you're doing this alone." The words hit her harder than she expected. She blinked rapidly, trying to process them. "I'm not alone. I've got this," she said, though her voice wavered slightly. She wasn't sure why she was saying it. She wasn't sure why she was still trying to convince herself that this was just business, that she didn't feel anything more. But the truth was, she wasn't sure anymore. She didn't expect Liam to respond the way he did. He leaned forward, his expression softening, the stern businessman she'd come to know so well now replaced with something more human. "Sophia," he said, his voice gentle, "I know you don't like to rely on anyone, but you don't have to do this alone, not anymore." Her breath hitched. There was something in his eyes, something raw, something vulnerable, that made her heart race. But she couldn't give in. She couldn't let herself believe that this was more than just a moment of weakness, a fleeting softness. "I'm fine," she said again, this time more forcefully. But the words didn't have the same power behind them. "I'll be okay." Liam didn't answer, but he didn't need to. His eyes told her everything she needed to know. The days after that visit were a blur for Sophia. She couldn't shake the feeling that something between her and Liam had shifted. It was subtle at first, a glance that lingered too long, a touch that felt too personal. But it was there, undeniable and confusing. She tried to focus on the baby, on the task she had been given, her mission to get through this pregnancy and give birth to a child that wasn't hers. She told herself over and over again that this was just business. But Liam's presence in her life had become more than just a transactional arrangement. The way he cared for her, how he made sure she was comfortable, how he showed up at every appointment, these things made it impossible to ignore the growing connection between them, and it terrified her. One evening, a few weeks later, the weight of the situation hit her harder than ever. She was sitting on the couch in her apartment, cradling her growing belly, when there was a knock at the door. Her heart skipped. She didn't expect anyone, especially not Liam. When she opened the door, there he was, standing in the hallway, holding a bag of food and a bottle of wine. His expression was soft, but there was an intensity in his eyes that made her stomach flutter. "You're still up?" he asked, his voice low. "I wasn't planning on going to bed yet," she replied, stepping aside to let him in. "What's this?" She glanced at the bag he was holding. "Dinner," he said with a shrug. "I thought you might be hungry." Sophia smiled, trying to hide the rush of emotions that swirled inside her. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he said simply, stepping further into the apartment and setting the food on the coffee table. "You've been working too hard. I figured you could use a break." She wanted to tell him that she didn't need him to take care of her, that she was fine on her own. But when she looked at him, something inside her softened. He wasn't just taking care of her because it was part of their agreement. He was doing it because, somehow, he had come to care, and that terrified her. They sat down to eat together, the quiet between them comfortable, but laden with unspoken words. As they ate, their conversation drifted from the baby to their pasts, their dreams, and their regrets. It was the first time they really talked, really connected beyond the surface level. Sophia found herself laughing at his stories, teasing him about things she never thought she'd joke about with a billionaire. Liam, in turn, seemed more relaxed than she had ever seen him. The walls that usually surrounded him, the ones that kept everyone at arm's length, seemed to lower just a little. And it made her wonder if, despite everything, there was more to their connection than she was willing to admit. After dinner, they settled into a more comfortable silence, watching a show she had picked out on TV. She could feel Liam's presence beside her, his warmth radiating in a way that made her heart beat a little faster than usual. But she couldn't let herself focus on that. She had to stay objective. This was just a job, right? But then Liam spoke, his voice suddenly serious. "Sophia." She turned to look at him, her chest tightening in anticipation. "What is it?" Liam shifted slightly, his gaze not meeting hers immediately. He seemed to be gathering his thoughts. "I know we've kept things strictly professional," he said slowly, "but I don't want you to feel like you're doing this alone. I know you said it's just business, but I want you to know that I'm here. I'm here for you and for the baby." Sophia felt a lump form in her throat. The sincerity in his voice hit her harder than she expected. "Liam, I'm not asking for anything more," he cut in quickly, his eyes meeting hers with a mixture of vulnerability and determination. "But I need you to know that I'm not just doing this because of the deal. I'm doing it because I care." She didn't know how to respond. The words were there, just on the edge of her mind, but she couldn't bring herself to say them. Instead, she just nodded, trying to mask the flood of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "I know," she whispered. "I know." Liam leaned back, his expression softening, but there was still that intensity in his eyes. The tension between them was thick now, almost tangible, but neither of them made a move to break it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was unsettling. "Why did you say that?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam met her gaze, his lips pressed together, as if considering his next words carefully. "Because I don't want to hide behind the walls I've built. I don't want to keep doing what I've always done, keeping people out, keeping them at arm's length. Not with you." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. She had known Liam as the cold, detached billionaire, the one who didn't get involved emotionally. But now, sitting here with him, hearing him speak so honestly, she realized that maybe he wasn't what she had always assumed. And that terrified her, Because the more she looked at him, the more she saw the cracks in the armor he had so carefully built around himself, and the more she cared. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, the sound of a baby kicking startled her. Liam immediately noticed, his hand instinctively moving to her stomach. "Is he?" "Yeah," Sophia whispered, placing his hand over her belly. "He's kicking." Liam's face softened, a smile tugging at his lips as he felt the movement beneath his palm. It was such a simple gesture, but it made Sophia's heart flutter. She hadn't expected him to react this way. She hadn't expected him to be so gentle, so attentive. But here he was, his focus entirely on her and their child. For a moment, she let herself breathe, let herself feel the warmth of the moment. It wasn't just the baby kicking. It was something else, something between them. "I can't believe this is happening," she whispered. "It feels so surreal." Liam turned to look at her, his hand still on her belly. "It does, doesn't it?" Sophia met his gaze, and for the first time she felt the distance between them close. There was something unspoken between them now, something neither of them was willing to acknowledge but both could feel. It was the beginning of something. But what? "I didn't think I'd be here," Liam said, his voice soft and almost self-deprecating. "I didn't think I'd care." Sophia's heart thudded in her chest as she looked at him, her emotions rising to the surface. "Liam, He held up a hand, gently cutting her off. "I know, Sophia, I didn't expect this either, but I'm not going to back away now." And for the first time, she believed him. The hours leading up to Sophia's due date were tense, filled with anticipation and the kind of uncertainty that only an impending life-changing event could bring. Liam had spent the day in his office, distracted, his mind wandering to the baby, to Sophia, and to everything that had happened between them. There were moments when he allowed himself to hope for a future with her, hope for something more than just the deal they had made. But as the night wore on, he found himself packing the floors of his apartment, unable to sit still. He was supposed to be with Sophia, but she insisted on resting at home, and Liam knew she needed the space. The baby was coming soon. Everything was changing. And despite how certain he had been about everything up until this point, he couldn't shake the doubts gnawing at him. Was he really ready for this? Was he ready for her? His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden knock at the door. It was late, far too late for a visit. With a sigh, Liam reluctantly opened it. And there she was, Hannah. His ex-girlfriend, the woman who had been a part of his life before everything had changed. She stood in the doorway, her face cold and unreadable, her eyes filled with something darker, something he hadn't seen in a long time. "Hannah," Liam's voice was sharp, surprised to see her standing there, especially after all these years. "What are you doing here?" "I think you know why I'm here," Hannah said, her tone laced with bitterness. "You think you can just move on, don't you?" Liam's stomach dropped. He had known this moment was coming, but he hadn't expected it to be like this. He hadn't expected her to show up now, not when everything was so close to falling into place. "The baby you're having with that woman, Sophia," Hannah continued, her voice cold, her words like daggers, "isn't just a business deal. You promised me you would start a family with me. Don't forget that." Liam was stunned. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of everything they had once been. He stared at her, his mind racing. "Hannah, this has nothing to do with you anymore. I'm moving forward." But even as he said the words, he felt the truth of them slip away. He hadn't been able to move on fully, not from her, not from the promises they'd made. He had buried it, yes, but the past had a way of resurfacing when you least expected it. Hannah took a step back, her expression hardening. "Don't come crying to me when it all falls apart," she said, her voice bitter. She turned and walked away without another word, leaving Liam standing there, the door swinging closed behind her. For a long moment, Liam stood there in the silence of his apartment, his heart pounding in his chest. The weight of Hannah's words echoed in his mind. "You promised me, start a family with me." The promise he had made to her, the life he had once envisioned, felt so far removed from the man he had become. Sophia had come into his life like a whirlwind, and now, in the quiet aftermath of the confrontation with Hannah, he found himself questioning everything. Had he been lying to himself all along? Was he really moving on from his past, or had he just buried it all under layers of detachment? His thoughts turned to Sophia, the woman who was about to bring his child into the world. He thought about the way she had looked at him when they shared those moments, those quiet confessions, those unexpected touches. The way she had made him feel things he had long buried. The way he had started to care for her, really care for her. Was it too late to change things? Was he ready for this, ready to give her everything she deserved? But the doubts lingered, lingering like a shadow in the back of his mind. He had a past he couldn't just erase. The promises he had made to Hannah were a part of him, even if he didn't want them to be. He had told Sophia that he was moving forward, but what did that mean? Could he really move forward with her when his past was still so present, so real? A knock at the door broke him from his thoughts. Sophia. He opened the door, and there she was, her face pale, her eyes tired, but there was something different about her. A quiet strength that she had kept hidden, and yet it was so obvious now. "I need to talk to you," she said softly, her voice shaky. Liam's heart dropped, his chest tightening. "Sophia, what's wrong?" She took a step inside, and for the first time, she wasn't just the woman carrying his child. She was someone else, someone he had come to care about in ways he didn't understand, ways he didn't know how to process. "I can't do this alone," she said, her voice breaking. She looked at him with an intensity that made his heart skip. "I thought I could. I told myself this was just a business deal, that I would hand over the baby and walk away. But I can't. I can't pretend that I don't care about you, about us." Liam felt his heart race in his chest. Did she feel it too? The same pull, the same tension between them that had been building for weeks. He could see the rawness in her eyes, the vulnerability that she had been hiding for so long. "I never wanted to get involved like this," she continued, her voice trembling. "But now I can't imagine my life without you. I don't want to be just a surrogate anymore." Liam took a step toward her, his mind racing. "Sophia, Before he could finish, she shook her head. "I'm scared, Liam. I'm scared of what this means, of what this could turn into. But I don't want to hide anymore. I don't want to keep pretending that I'm okay with just walking away from this, from you." The words hit him harder than anything Hannah had said earlier. He had spent so long trying to protect himself, trying to keep everything at arm's length. But with Sophia standing in front of him, vulnerable and real, he knew there was no going back. "I don't know what to say," he whispered, his voice shaking. "I don't know how to fix this." Sophia looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "You don't have to fix anything, Liam. Just be here, with me." The words hung in the air between them, and for the first time, Liam let himself admit something he had been fighting. He loved her. He loved her in a way that terrified him, but in a way that felt more real than anything he had ever experienced. "I'm here," he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm here for you, Sophia, and for the baby." Without another word, they came together, their lips meeting in a kiss that was more than just physical. It was a promise, a recognition of everything they had been through and everything they still had to face. And in that kiss, all the walls Liam had built around his heart came crashing down. If you've enjoyed this story, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this one, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to share with someone who could use a heartfelt story today. This is just the beginning for Liam and Sophia, and we can't wait to see where their journey takes them. Stay tuned for more.